Hello friends, welcome to our channel English Literature Zone. Today we will discuss Leda and the Swan, which is one of the most important poems written by William Butler Yeats. This poem is in the syllabus of BPSC optional paper, and this is also helpful for the students of graduation and post-graduation as well as the students of NTA NET. So let's start. Leda and the Swan. Leda and the Swan is an ekphrastic poem, a poem of art which is written by William Butler Yeats, and he was one of the prominent member of Irish literary revival. He was also a great poet of 20th century. He was the first Irishman who got Nobel Prize in 1923. Leda and the Swan is in picturesque presentation, and he is presenting this poem in a very erotic scene. It is a Petrarchan sonnet and it has rhyme scheme AB AB CD CD, and the last 6 lines are having EFG EFG as the rhyme scheme. It is in iambic pentameter. It has an octet as well as a sestet. As you know, their sonnets must have octet and a sestet. The first 8 lines introduce the subject, and the coming 6 lines in the poem depict the depth of the poem. It depicts the very deep meaning of the poem. The poem is a Greek mythology. It shows the Greek mythology that is hidden in its lines. The poet talks about the swan, which is a bird, but it is a god. In Greek mythology, it is a god of Greek people. In Greek mythology, the swan in the form of Zeus, who is a god, in Greek mythology seduces and made love to Leda, who was a Greek princess of a city Sparta of ancient Greece. She was the princess of that place, and her name was Leda. In the very first 4 lines, it represents a big bird, a swan with great wings, which is none other than Zeus. Beating his enormous and very big wings, the swan gives a sudden and a staggering blow to the lady Leda, who was bathing naked in a pond. The bird, who was in the form of swan, but that bird was not an ordinary bird. It was God Zeus in the form of swan. The swan was looming over the lady, and he was fluttering over her. He was grabbing her thighs and holding her nape with his beak and pressing her bare breast upon his chest. This scene shows the highly erotic scene and seduction by the swan Zeus, who was God. So it is showing a picture of copulation between a god and a mortal or a human being. That is Lady Leda, who is the princess of Greek, she seems helpless in his clutch. It seems in the poem, which is signified by loosening of her thighs, and it represents strong sexual appeal, that is a mate between a girl and a god. The second stanza shows the helplessness of the girl, the princess Leda, who is terrified by the assaults done by the swan god Zeus. It gives a vision of rape or forceful seduction. Being a mortal creature, Leda could not overwhelmed by this blur of white feather, the feathers of swan, who was god Zeus, an immortal creature. So the power of God and the enormous strength of the swan who was God was unescapable for Leda. She could not keep the feelings from the alien heartbeat of her attackers, which was pressed against her own. She could not overpower the terrified vague fingers of the swan, which was very powerful, which was the fingers of God, which was in the form of swan. Then the poet goes on portraying the further scene, and he says that the mating between Zeus, who was a god, and a girl, a mortal, a human being, resulted in conceiving a child, and that child was perhaps Helen. In this poem, Helen is not described here, but instead of Helen, it has given the name of Agamemnon. Agamemnon is the brother of Menelaus, and Menelaus was the husband of Helen. Helen was taken away by the Paris of Troy, and that caused the war of Troy. That was the Trojan War, and that led the death of Agamemnon, who was returning from the war after killing some heroes in the war. He was killed in returning. So here the poet has described the death of Agamemnon, but he has not said that the child who was given birth because of the mating of god Zeus and Leda, that child is Helen, but somehow he has described it. It is related to Helen, and he has described it in this way. He has represented in this way the picture that the mating of God and human, that was somehow a forceful act done by the swan, but it led to violation, assaults, and so he says that violations beget violations, which he has described by giving the example of Agamemnon's death. Yeats leaves the poem with unresolved depiction. He neither condemns nor approves. Neither he condemns the assaults done by the swan, nor he approves it. It shows an ambiguous picture in the light of mythological significance, and his concern is not the rape or seduction or sensuality. He measures it on a mythological scale, that rape, sex, brutality, and violence, these miseries always bring miseries and violence. It is neither showing his concern on the violation and assaults by Jews, nor he is approving the panic fear of Leda, which he has presented in the poem. He represents harm within mythology and history. As in last two lines of the poem, he asks whether a human being can understand their fate. So he leaves the poem with two rhetorical questions. He asks two rhetorical questions, and he has left the poem on the reader's conclusion, which is to be drawn by the readers. He has not concluded the poem in the end, but in his one of book which is named which has a name A Vision, in that book he has described about Leda's rape, and he regards Leda's rape as an analogues analogous with the Annunciations. That is, he is saying that a moment when the angel Jibril tells Mary that she will conceive a child by God. So in the same way, he has given this picture, which is the mating, the copulation between Zeus, which is in the form of the swan, and lady, who is Leda, the princess of the Greek. So Leda also is having a child. Her name is Helen, which I have already described. So this child has been given birth for a transformative effect on Greek history. So he is in some way saying to the readers that in his another book that one should not take it as a rape, or one should not take it as the assaults done by the swan, or miseries or the helplessness tolerated by Leda. He neither approves nor condemns it, and this scene which is in the poem is against the modern picture or the modern scenario. It is very informal, but his main motive is not to depict such pictures to promote it or to show the miseries of Leda. Neither he is giving the picture that he is approving rape or seduction. He is just giving a picture that how violence, brutality, how something that is wrong give birth to negativity or violences or miseries only. In this way, he has given this message to the readers. And since he was not an ordinary poet, so his motive was not to depict any erotic scene to the readers or something very unusual thing or informal scene. He was a great poet, so he has given this picture just to make a concern of the readers to understand in the light of Greek mythology. He is giving significances in the poem of Greek mythologies. In this way, he ends the poem, and in next video I will come with another topic, with another poem or anything else. So please keep watching. Do like, share and subscribe.